Everyone is going to have the opportunity to change the way they think, feel, sense, and believe and perceive.
As you're seeing these pattern recognitions around the developments that we're seeing in humanity, these evolutionary discoveries that will reshape, especially in this year, in this next year, 2026.
The soul is that part of us that is eternal, that never dies. It has been here forever, it will be here forever. It's very difficult to think of that if you insist on using time as we understand it as a constant. But outside of the third dimension, even outside of our solar system, in our dimension, time does not flow the way we see it as being.
Before today's transmission, I wanted to take a minute to let you in on something that could change your life. If you've been doing the inner work and still feel like you're walking this path alone, you're not the only one. Most spiritual spaces give you endless content to consume, but not a tribe to grow with. That's why we created The Deep Dive, a living spiritual ecosystem designed to help you grow in community, rhythm, and real embodiment. Right now, our members are embarking on a journey exploring a core spiritual and practical teaching through daily activations, live community gatherings guided by me and our facilitators, and also participating in sacred challenges that are designed to help you live your practice and bring it to life. You'll be surrounded by seekers and leaders who've decided that they're done doing this work in isolation. If you're ready to find your people, visit the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now, and I'll see you inside. Steve Judd, welcome back on Just Tap In, brother. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
I live in a state of perpetual anticipation and hope. So when you ask me what am I most excited about, still being alive at my age and looking forward to solstice in a few days from now. And apart from that, not a lot, because life is just a consistent revelation. I feel constantly turned on by being alive at this time in history, being in this three-dimensional construct at this time. It's stimulating, it's exciting, it's a real turn on, and it makes me feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. So yeah.
Beautiful. What do you feel has been most revealed to you in the last 12 months that you're taking with you into this next year, 2026?
Vindication. I feel like the events of this last 12 months have made me realize more and more that what I go on about and what I practice is real. I feel that the feedback I'm getting from people, the vindication I get when I see the world going through crazy periods, it tells me that the way I'm seeing it and the way I'm dealing with it and the way I'm helping others see it, it's real. And yeah, sometimes I feel like the rest of the world's crazy and I'm on an island of sanity along with 1 billion or so others. Because you don't hear about all the good things that happen, you just hear the shock and the horror. But there is a lot of good things happening in this world.
Agreed. And in our last conversation, you were mentioning that the decisions and the actions that we take as a collective from around February, March 2025 to May 2026 are going to influence the next 40 to 50 years of human history. I wanted to start with an overview of where that statement actually came from for you or arise from for you. And then we can start getting into the weeds of the decisions and actions that you feel are coming up for us as a collective.
Well, as we live in a constantly evolving universe, so my ideas and opinions change. I don't remember what I said to you 8-9 months ago, but I do know that the timetable has both been compressed and to a minor extent extended. So if I said to you last time that February 25 through to May 26, I would now be saying February 25 to mid-July 26. But, you know, that's just adding another 6 to 8 weeks on the end. Because the more I look at what's coming up, okay, let's put it in another way. Let's put it in a way that I can understand and talk authoritatively on. A few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I sat down for a whole day and I just did lots and lots and lots of calculations, looking at the movement of planets over the next year, looking at the aspects they made with each other, the new and full moons, the eclipses, the times that planets change sign. And out of this, it was like I distilled an essence, if you like, from this. And from that essence, I narrowed it down, I fermented it from a large vat to a smaller and smaller container, and then down just to a very little bottle. And now I'm pretty clearer than I've ever been on the timetable that's coming up over the next 8 months. And as I'm fond of saying to my clients, I'm not that good at making prediction or forecasts in terms of events, but I'm damn good with the timings. And we're on the cusp of a moment of species evolution, the like of which has never, ever happened before and will probably never happen again. It is a once in a species moment. Not once in a millennia, once in a species. And that's why I'm suggesting that where we are now collectively, as at the end of our training, the end of our apprenticeship, and we're about to go into a massive evolutionary leap, which is going to be quite terrifying for a large amount of people in the very short term. But we will get used to it very quickly. And we won't be alone. We'll be supported. It might make a bit more sense if I say that in recent months, I've become more and more open to the idea that the universe as we perceive it isn't as we've been led to believe. It's just one facet of a vast, bigger multiverse. And that the universe as we see it is just one frequency, one wavelength. And that beyond that wavelength, beyond the parameters, beyond the boundaries of that wavelength, lie parallel universes with parallel collectives that have kind of been waiting for us to evolve for a very long time, to welcome us into a kind of galactic or multiversal family. So when I say we'll get help, I don't mean we'll get help from angels or ETs or Pleiadians or Syrians. I do think we're going to get help from other forms of consciousness that inhabit our planet at the same time as us, but outside of our range of consciousness, just outside of our dimension, different dimensional beings living indigenously on our planet who have been waiting for us to join with them basically since we started inventing fire and got off our knuckles and started communicating with each other. So it's a pretty big time. And I do appreciate that many people will look at this and go, he's off his head, he's off his rocker. I may be. It may be that I've got this all wrong and I'm making it up. But if I am, I'm really happy in my ignorance. And bearing in mind, I've been studying what I study for more than 48 years now, nearly 50 years. And I've never seen anything like this. I've gone back tens of thousands of years looking at patterns in the sky. I've never seen anything like this. Never. There's never been a time like this from an astrological perspective. And there is one other thing that's changed for me as well. I've always looked at the planets in the sky and seen the patterns they make with each other. And being an astrologer means working with pattern recognition, translating the patterns into user-friendly language that helps people evolve. But in this last year, I've really grown and into realizing that the relationship between the planets in the sky is far more than I previously supposed. This is going to happen before this video gets released. But in a few days' time, I'm doing a live stream on the perfection of the geometry between planets in the sky. I'm calling it's not really sacred geometry, that's just a label. But I think I can prove that the position of the planets in the sky, their orbital rotation or period, their distance from each other is not random, because it creates patterns of such accuracy. We're talking to an accuracy of 20,000 miles over 2 billion, 99.9% plus, consistently as well, not just one example, but over 100 different examples. And it's all very well being able to point out the accuracy of these patterns, but for the first time ever, I'm starting to get an indication of meaning, of what it means, how there is intelligent design in our solar system and beyond, and what that means and what the root of it really is. Bearing in mind that as an astrologer, I don't do God, or aliens for that matter. So to me, this is such an exciting time to be alive. Many of my friends whom I've known a long time are no longer around for various reasons: alcohol, drugs, heart attack. But I'm in great health. I think the astrology is keeping me alive because I've still got plenty of things to do. I've got some big events next year. And to be honest, I am seriously, just in the last few weeks, beginning to think of the idea that as I get into into October of next year, I'm seriously thinking about slowing down and just taking on quality developments, quality events, because, I'm in the last 10 to 15 years of my life, and I'm not going to get lazy or complacent, but I still want to have a little bit of adventure and fun for myself, as well as continuing to do what I do. But not in this next year. This next year is really pivotal. That would teach you to ask me questions like that.
Right. You just opened some of the most fascinating territory to go into. One that I feel really called to go into especially at this start, is you talked about the help that we're receiving. And you've been talking about this dimensional breakthrough for many years now. And you say it's related to our developments in the quantum realm and also nanotech, how we look at time, space, and the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel as you're seeing these pattern recognitions around the developments that we're seeing in humanity, these evolutionary discoveries that will reshape, especially in this year, in this next year, 2026, regarding our understanding of what this reality really is? Also tying that in with the precision that you're seeing and the intelligence behind the design of this universe.
As the nature of the space-time construct that we inhabit becomes more obvious, so it becomes clearer to me what not the, but a purpose of this is. And I think that one of the purposes of the construct that we live in is to act as a kind of safe zone for us to evolve without doing too much damage to ourselves or any other life form or energy. But now we're getting to that point where the purpose of evolution is going to become much more obvious. Compare where we are now to where we were last time we spoke. Look how much artificial intelligence, ASI, AR, augmented reality, look how things are accelerating exponentially daily. Stuff I was doing 6 months ago, which was cutting edge, I'm now having to redo. I think we're about to make some type of breakthrough. Not in a way that's like piercing a veil, although that is a nice analogy, but more in terms of opening up different receptors in our brain, utilizing more of what we were born with, becoming more conscious, which means enhancing and expanding our perception and becoming more aware of what's actually going on around us. This does not mean telepathy or anyone else being able to read what you're thinking or anything like that, because I know that's a scary thought for many people. It does mean being able to read energy fields developing around you, much like certain animals already can. You know, for example, cats and dogs, they know when you're in a foul mood. They just know and they walk away. I think we're getting to that point as well, but retaining our capacity for objective intelligence as well as just the instinctual feelings. It's a blend. It's a blend of the animal instinct and the human intuition. We've denied our instincts for far too long. It's almost as if we're scared of the animal that lives within us, or that we live in and with. But now there's a sense of integration and assimilation coming in. And if I need evidence of this, I just know in my life, just in the last few weeks even, more and more, I'm finding myself with people I know well and with complete strangers thinking exactly the same thoughts as they are at exactly the same time. Saying something and they're going, I that just popped into my head just as you said it. And it's two-way traffic. It's happening to them as well as me. And this seems to be happening a lot more. Might just be a unique, rare phenomena, but I choose to see it as another step forward. It's getting to the point where there is no no way of rationalizing in a logical, rational, analytical, scientifically demonstrable way what's happening. For example, I'm dealing with a lot of people at the moment in the mathematical world, and I'm showing them the examples I have of the geometry of the planets in the sky, and they're going, yeah, but that's just maths. I'm like, okay, so if you were to take 10 balls and throw them randomly into a space and send them spinning round, then they could randomly spin in any orbit, would you find patterns there? And they said, yeah, eventually over a course of time, yes, we would. I said, would they be as perfect as they are now? Well, no. I said, right, so there's an inherent meaning in this. At which point they kind of go, I'm not comfortable with that assumption. Now, I have a problem with astronomers, mathematicians, scientists who stick to the rigid narrative that they were trained with and refuse to go beyond it for fear of their own narrative, their own backstory collapsing under the weight of new evidence. I just used to do astrology and go, okay, astrology works, therefore I can use it to help people and do horoscopes and make a living. Great. And now it's just like, wow, it's expanded 100-fold. To my mind, the business of the future is to take risks. It is to expand. It is to learn and grow, not to play safe. That's how the dinosaurs became extinct. And that is a really good analogy, because a lot of the existing dinosaurs in this world are on their very last legs. So, interesting times, as the Chinese might say.
For sure. And one of my favorite things that you said in our last conversation is that even though we're going through this massive event, tipping point, you said nobody left behind. And that's something that I really resonate with, in the sense that we're all having this energy available to us to go through this evolution. What do you feel will it take for the 8 billion of us to make this leap, instead of it having to be a split like so many others are talking about at the moment?
Well, you can go back all the way to, you can go back thousands of years to where the chosen ones will be saved on the Ark, for example, or the 144,000 in various different cults. That's all just numerology and geometry. As a species, we all have to make the journey together, yes. However, the closer we get and the more dichotomized and fragmented our collective society becomes, I'm beginning to realize it is never going to be a question of us and them. That is just the politics of division. And that's how the dominator culture has perpetuated for millennia, by divide and conquer. Everyone is going to have the opportunity to change the way they think, feel, sense, and believe and perceive. Everyone is going to be confronted by certain realities dawning upon them in a way that's going to make them go, okay, so much of what I've been told so far has been a lie. And when I say a lie, I don't mean enemy action. It's been almost, we've collectively connived in order to get to a point in a safe way where we can make a jump forward with less risk than if we'd just gone at it head first. So I'm not trying to make anyone the enemy here, but there are many people who are so either embedded in fear, neuroses, isolationism, and or brain dead because of the processed food, the chemical medicines. Everyone's going to get the opportunity. Everyone will see the chance to take a step forward. it's similar to what I believe the death process is like. I am not advocating death. No one's going to die apart from normal physical old age as it exists in this dimension. But it's analogous to that in that I don't do death, okay? To me, death is just a transition of consciousness. And when you die, yes, the Greeks had a word for it. The ancient Greeks called it psyche. And there were specially trained young women who would sit by someone who was dying, and at the moment of death, they would see a wisp of smoke leave the chest. And they called that the psyche, and that was the part that is eternal, the soul, if you like. And I believe that when the soul gets to where it's going, there's going to be a lot of metaphorical first aiders and resuscitation teams, and B, there's going to be a big party, lots of cake, lots of good times. So I believe there's going to be a lot of help given to us for those that are willing to take that chance. I think there was a couple of science fiction movies about 25, 30 years ago. I think it was either called Cocoon or Contact. It wasn't Contact, that was Jodie Foster. It was Cocoon, where people just left. They just went. And I know he's not popular these days, but Kevin Spacey was in a movie called K-Pax, where he was an alien who came to Earth for a holiday and got put in a lunatic asylum. And when he left, he uttered the immortal line to the doctor who was treating him, trying to dispel him of his fantasies. He said, "Look, I've got to go now. I've got a beam of light to catch." And he left. Yeah, he left his body behind as an empty shell, still physically alive, but no one was at home. But I like that. I've got to catch a beam of light. I've got a beam of light to catch. So I've got my beam of light to catch. And I fully intend to catch it and yet still retain identity, individuality, consciousness and physical body, and still be on this three-dimensional planet intact. And I don't know how it's going to work, and I don't know what's going to happen. But I have faith and hope that it is going to work out all right, because for all of the trauma and troubles we see in the world today, there is in the background a large amount of understated hope. And as I said earlier, there's a lot of people doing good things that you never see in the newspapers because it doesn't sell. The kindness of strangers, the love of just planting vegetables, growing flowers, the kindness to animals, the help to people less fortunate than oneself. This isn't reported, yet it does happen everywhere in the world. Perhaps the politicians have a great deal to learn from the common people.
Yeah, and if we knew how it was going to work, it wouldn't be fun at all. And speaking about shells, you and I, both Cancerians, we know a lot about that. I did want to pull a quote from you that I came across the other day, which was, "This late January and mid-April are like the final hammer blows that are going to break open the shell that's been holding us for 2,000 plus years."
Exactly. And I said to you earlier that I've slightly adjusted my time frame for all of this stuff. And it seems to me, from my astrological perspective, that there are 3 times in 2026 that are pivotal. One is the period of the 17th to the 22nd of January, which I see as the last big, desperate attempt by the dinosaurs to maintain their 2,000 years of dominator culture, which will fail, obviously. And then there's the time in April, around the 15th to the 20th of April, when for the only time ever there will be 7 planets in the sign of Aries. It never happened before. Which to me is that is the pivotal moment, the crunch point. And that to me is breakdown and breakthrough. The results of that will then percolate through over the next few months to the period of about the 2nd and 3rd week of July, when 4 of the 5 outer planets will all occupy 4 degrees of their respective sign. And to me, that is the gateway moment. By gateway, it's when I think that the collective will of the global community will become so strong that it will be impossible for the dominator culture to suppress it anymore. I'm really not advocating revolution, aggression, violence in any shape or form, because that defeats the object. It can be done through non-violent, passive resistance. And I just think a lot of people are getting really, really hacked off with what's being done in their name, whether it's from religion or politics or warfare. And I'm pretty sure from August 2026 onwards, I've looked forward 50 years, 100 years, and I can't see anything in the next 100 years that's anything like what we're going through now. Now, I have a really good friend, Rick Levine, who's also a master astrologer. He's been doing it longer than I have, and I've been doing it 48 years. And he reminds me sometimes that just because these big events happen at that time, it doesn't mean the final outcomes will happen at that time. And he's right. But what's going to be happening is that there's going to be, the seeds are going to crack open. Shoots are going to come out. This is the time where the inevitability of the future is guaranteed. If those seeds are crushed, then within 10 generations will be extinct. If they're nurtured, within 5 to 10 years, we'll start seeing an environmental comeback on the planet. We'll start seeing things changing in a really positive way. Now, for that to happen, we'll take collective will. And that will mean that the vast majority of people will need to actually stand up and say, no, this is what we want to happen. And I don't know what it is that people will want to happen. But I think they'll realise collectively that it won't be powered by money or fear or sex or processed food or any other of the placebos. I mean, for example, all we need is one decent CME, coronal mass ejection from the sun. Just one. Boom, all the satellites go instantly. All the mobile phones go out, the internet goes out, we get knocked back 50, 60 years in telecommunications. That could happen overnight. That's one of the type of scenarios I'm thinking as in a negative way. That would knock the human race back massively. I find it fascinating. We know a lot more about outer space than we do our own planet. Mm-hmm. You know, we haven't really explored Antarctica or the depths of the oceans yet.
The ocean, yeah.
We have no idea what's down there. Yeah, we're looking
even
at
within
far
Earth.
off galaxies.
Yeah, inner Earth.
Yeah, I've read all the old articles on what the Nazis believed about the inner Earth shells, the layers of the onion, and I do have a problem with that because it doesn't fit the geological patterns that I believe to be true. But I do feel that there's a great deal of knowledge buried in the earth, and that the historians are basically wrong. The intelligent civilization on this planet goes back a lot further than they believe to be true. And it's not a logical, it's not a irrational assumption, because, you know, humanity's been around at least 1 million years, walking, grunting if not talking, living in tribes, farming. Yet historians would say that it's only in the last 10,000 years or 400 generations that we've developed from grunting Neanderthals into AI and the interface, you know, the coming interaction and interface between AI and humanity, the symbiosis. And for that to happen in 400 generations is such a ridiculously small amount of time. We're discovering more and more. Just in the last few weeks, in southeast England, they discovered the earliest sign of fire being deliberately used to cook meat from 400,000 years ago. So I think this kind of knocks this idea of humanity as a recent species pretty much on the head. So what were our ancestors up to? How did they develop the patterns on the Earth's surface that we now know as power spots and ley lines in ways that modern geographers and historians will say is randomicity and chance? Is there a vested interest in denying our past collectively? I don't know, I'm just philosophizing on this. I'm not trying to big up conspiracy theories, because I don't do conspiracy theories apart from perhaps 9/11, but you know, that's all. So I do think that most of these questions we're going to start getting answers to in the very near future. That's why I see it as a moment of revelation.
What are the biggest questions you feel will get answered?
The questions are so big, there are no... I read a book a few months ago, a couple of years ago, about farming village in southern England who living off the land, just farmers living off the land. And the church was very strong. Every so often they dig up something in the farmyard, in the fields, and think, what's that? Never seen that. And then one day, someone dug deep into the field and found a little cave under a field, and went into it and found this cavern with what seemed like a big machine in it, and around it were lots of these little black oblongs like that, with leads coming out of them, all going to a central plug, and they're all dead. And they didn't know what they were seeing. And then the church came down on them like a ton of bricks and said, that's forbidden. Don't go ever again, otherwise we kill you. And it's like history repeats itself. We develop technology, we destroy ourselves, we start again. Now, I believe this has happened more than once, probably more than twice. And do we repeat the mistakes of the past, or do we actually learn from our lessons and move on? That's why I think the development of augmented reality, artificial superintelligence and artificial intelligence, and the accelerating rate that it's coming through, I truly can see a symbiosis. I can see us downloading consciousness, and integrating some type of interface with AI that's going to help us evolve at a faster rate. We can't uninvent things. Once they're invented, do we either ban them because they're terrible, or do we use them constructively? I feel for those people who still feel that AI is the monster, the Frankenstein. I understand why they think it. But I use AI all the time now. It's really good. And it helps me put what I already know into a better form. It doesn't write my stuff for me. I really look forward to speaking to you again in a year from now, when all this will be done. And we will have answers. We will either by then be starting to live in an age of enlightenment, or in a dystopian world of increased control and repression. The appeasement of the influencers and Instagram and TikTok is just the latest thing. I mean, it used to be cars and televisions. And before that, it was fridges and, you know, this is just the latest thing that's not enslaving us, but distracting us from the core issues. And the core issues are about, well, I hate to sound corny, but our own relationship with the divine, however we see the divine as being. No one's yet been able to monetize intuition and instinct. These are ours. No one can control them. They can influence them, but they can't control them. And it's one of the very few things that hasn't yet been monetized, because it's so innate to us as individuals. And that's why, at the end of the day, I trust my body perhaps more than I trust my mind and my feelings. It's a small step from there to a phase I'm using more and more in the last 6 months. And I know this is going to upset a lot of people, but it is my opinion that most, not all, but most illnesses are a physical manifestation of a non-physical cause. When I see people who are sick and they go to a doctor and the doctor goes, oh, I don't know, it might be anemia, it might be ME, might be fibromyalgia. We can't work out what it is that's wrong with you. I say to them, look, there's actually, what you're going through is a physical manifestation of a non-physical cause. Your soul is tired. And most people will look at me and they'll either go, you're crazy, what's a soul? Or, more realistically, those who are into their astrology will go, oh, you're so right. And I'll say to them, just take the next 6 months off, go on autopilot, have lots of baths, sleep lots, drink lots of water, don't eat crap food, you'll come back. When I was a kid, less than 1% of people had cancer. Less than 1% of people were obese. There was no neurodiversity. This is only 60 years ago. 2 generations. Now it's everywhere. So what's the single biggest common denominator that causes this? Processed food. And to a certain extent pollution, but processed food. I'm a big proponent of living as naturally and organically as is possible. Why spend your money on tobacco, narcotics and alcohol when you could spend it on good food?
Steve, for you, what is the soul?
The soul is that part of us that is eternal, that never dies. It has been here forever. It will be here forever. It's very difficult to think of that if you insist on using time as we understand it as a constant. But outside of the third dimension, even outside of our solar system, in our dimension, time does not flow the way we see it as being. If you need evidence of this, look at astronauts who go up on the space station for 6 months and they come back and they've aged in a very different way to the way they would on planet Earth. The further out in the solar system you go, the slower time becomes. I've heard many people suggest that the fifth dimension is where there is timeless time. Where people, when they get there, there is no time. They just are. So, to me, the soul is that part of us that is eternal, everlasting, unique, and unaffectable and untouchable by anyone else at any time, under any circumstances. Whereas spirit is external of ourselves. I have a great relationship with spirit. Sometimes I choose to call it the divine rather than spirit. Depends who I'm talking to. Makes it easier for them to understand. But I don't give the divine a name. I just call it the divine. If I'm feeling a little bit naughty, I'll say, yeah, the divine, yeah, she is waiting for me, just to get a reaction from people. Because, yeah, most people have got this idea of the divine as being an old man with a beard sitting on a cloud, and it's like, no. So, yeah, soul. Lovely.
I love the way that you articulated and explain that in your own eyes, your perspective. I have a very similar point of view. For a moment, shifting gears, I want to go back to what you mentioned earlier about the 7 planets in Aries, and how that energetically plays out in your purview as an astrologer. Just, letting us know what is that energy of Aries and the significance of having these conjunctions, sextiles, and everything in between in 7 planets during this most intense period of the year that you're calling it April, that 5-day period.
Okay, to understand this, it's necessary to look at the 6 months before that, because what's really strange is that the moon orbits our Earth, and it doesn't only go round the Earth, and for every month that it goes round the Earth, it also spins on its axis once, so that the same face of the moon is always facing the Earth. But the moon also goes in and out. At its closest, it's about 215,000 miles away, and at its furthest, it's nearly 250,000 miles away. But it doesn't only go in and out, round on its axis and around the Earth. It also goes up and down. These movements are why every month the new moon and the full moon are normally 1 to 2 degrees earlier in the month than they were in the preceding month. That's normal. What's different is that over the period of late September to late March, in the period we're in now, the cycle of the moon is unusually regular. And we are getting new and full moons in the same degree in consecutive signs for 7 months. It started with the new moon in Virgo on September the 21st at 28 Virgo. Then the next new moon was at 28 Libra, 28 Scorpio a few weeks ago, 28 Sagittarius in a couple of days' time, before the time you publish this, 28 Capricorn, 28 Aquarius, and then 27 3/4 Pisces, and then it goes back to normal. The moon after that will be at 27 degrees of Aries. Now, as we speak, there are 4 planets in Sagittarius, 3 now because Mars changed sign yesterday. In the next month, a lot of planets will move into Capricorn. There'll be 4 planets in Capricorn. And then in a month's time, there'll be 3 and then 4 planets in Capricorn and 2 in Pisces. The month after that, there'll be something like 4 planets in Capricorn and 3 in Aries. So all the planets are gradually coming together over a period of months, and then there will be 7 planets in Aries. This will be in 2 groups. There'll be a group of Mercury, Mars, Saturn and Neptune, all within 5 degrees of each other, all within a 5-degree span for about 3 days, 4 days, at exactly the same time as the new moon in Aries. The Sun conjunct the moon will be conjunct Chiron by 1 degree. So we're going to have 4 planets within 5 degrees and 3 planets within 1 degree, all in the same sign, over a 1 to 2 day period, centered around April the 17th. This has never happened. And this is going to create such a concentrated ball of energy in one particular area of the sky. I find it impossible that this will not have a very large effect on the vast majority of people and the planet as a whole. Now, when I say a big effect, I'm not talking about anything destructive. I'm not talking about earthquakes or volcanoes. Well, there may be a volcano or two, but nothing overly dramatic. It is the nature of Aries is bold, assertive and projective, dynamic, physically active, headstrong, rash, impulsive, impatient, and sometimes downright warlike. But I prefer to look on the positives. And with all these planets in Aries, it's like, okay, choice point. Choice point. Do we evolve or do we stay the same? And if we stay the same, that leads to entropy, which leads to decay, and that's that. Choice point's coming.
What's the choice?
Well,
What's
the choice is simple. Stay the same or move forward. Moving forward means taking chances, living dangerously, taking risks, and actually speaking your truth in an assertive and projective way without being confrontational and aggressive. Staying the same means drinking the Kool-Aid, buying the newspapers, watching the television, and complaining about how you can't get your meds and how everything is the politicians' fault. But, we've been doing that for hundreds of years. So, yeah, time's coming where the choice will be made. And to be honest, I don't really know which way we're going to go as a species. I know what I'll be doing at that time. I'll be out somewhere under the stars for a couple of nights. And ideally somewhere that's sacred to my ancestors, where there's a stone circle or a hill fort or something like that that the ancients knew as a power spot. And I will be dancing and howling, and I will be communing with the sky. And at the same time, I'll have my bare feet on the earth. So I'll be acting as a kind of interface between heaven and earth, head in the sky, feet on the ground. And I've honestly got no idea what's going to happen. And if I did know, I wouldn't share it anyway. Because we have so little mystery left. Everyone wants everything to be so planned. I know so many people who are going to be absolutely terrified if they can't get their daily meds and their daily newspaper and their normal supply of shock and horror to complain about. And it's terrifying. That's terrifying. not the threat of war or the threat of some type of massive breakthrough. And also, I deal with a lot of people, both on the holistic front and the more religious front, who are talking about salvation. There is no salvation. There's no ETs coming. Jesus isn't coming back. There's no one coming to save us. We are the future that we deserve. We have to do it individually and collectively. And as Rick says, we're not going to see overnight results, but the seeds are getting sown. And within a couple of years from now, we will see which way the future is going to be for the long-term future. And I'm really hoping that I see you in a year's time. And yes, my hair will be a bit whiter and grayer. May have one or two more frown lines, but I'll still be smiling.
Maybe I'll have a beard.
Yeah. In a way, I'm really not jealous of you at all, because I've lived. You know, I was 8 when the Beatles had their first #1 single. I was 14 when the Beatles split up and Jimi Hendrix died. I was 20 when punk happened. I was in my mid-30s when rave started, and my mid-40s when trance took off. I've seen a great deal of cultural change in my life. No one had televisions when I was a kid. Maybe 1 family in 10 had a television. So I kind of feel I've lived. I've had an interesting life. I've seen a lot change. There is no one alive now under the age of 35 who can remember what life was like before the internet.
Yeah.
When I had to draw all of my horoscopes by hand for the first 20, 25 years of my astrological life, I've only had computer printouts in the last 25 years. You realise how dependent we are on technology at the moment in a way that's a little bit scary, because it could go just like that. We've had a few outages in this last year, with various apps going down, with various Cloudflare, I think it's Cloudflare, whatever, the internet outages of the last 6 to 9 months that have taken down X, FaceTime, Google, banks. So it's all on a knife edge.
Do you remember our last interview where we had a scheduled interview and I was getting ready and everything, and all of a sudden power outage through all of Europe, almost all, three countries.
Outage, yeah.
The whole day, no power.
And they never really went public as to what the cause of that was.
No, at least I didn't really get an answer.
Yeah.
It can happen.
Well, get the carrier pigeon and the smoke signals ready.
The owl. I'll send you an owl.
Yeah. Or we can engage our own telepathic and psychic abilities.
We can meet on the hill. I don't know if you've seen this the telepathy tapes of children on the spectrum that are meeting telepathically in a place that they call the hill. And they make friends and they know each other, but they're, millions of miles across the world, and they don't, they've never met in person. It's fascinating what's happening right now.
There was a thing on Netflix, it's still there now, called Sense8, where a group of people just start linking in with each other, and they're the first of the new wave of people.
I've seen that one.
Yeah, this is tastes of things to come. In the old days, we used to have painters and then authors who would be the forerunners of the future. Now it's movies. And if that's the case, so many movies now are just like guns and violence and sex, which is why I prefer to stick to sci-fi, non-violent sci-fi, exploratory sci-fi, because that's more realistic, I think.
Mm-hmm. Astrologically speaking, I'm really curious to know what you have tuned into around the souls that are being born, especially in this window of years, maybe since 2020. What have you tuned into that?
I think that the recent wave of souls being born since the pandemic there's two waves. This generation, I don't know what the pronoun is, whether it's Y, X or 0, but the generation born in the last 30 years, many of whom now classify as different, there's about 38 different genders now, I believe. And there's a great deal of neurodiversity, which covers a lot of different labels.
Yeah.
Now, none of this was around when I was a kid. That's not to say it's not real, because it so obviously is. So why is this sudden boom happening? And it's easy to say it's because of the way our parents' genes have been affected by pollution and processed food over a long period of time. Yeah, maybe. But it's also that the physical body is getting weaker collectively as the consciousness is getting stronger. And I suppose the natural progression of this, were we to continue in our movement forward for another few hundred years, would be either the sort of cyborg mentality where we augment our physicality, or more realistically, consciousness leaves the body and we become just pure thoughts. Whew, that's a big one. I hadn't even thought about that one before. That's a long way down the line. But I could see it over a period of another sort of 20 generations. As to the children being born in the last 5 years, I mean, I do a lot of children's horoscopes. Obviously not with the children, with their parents. You never work with people under 18 unless the parents are there. That's a golden rule in my book. They haven't got the same filters that we had. They don't operate in the same way we did. There's no one telling them you can't do this, you can't think that. So they're much more of an open book. To the emerging youth of today, it's normal that the planets affect us. But we live in a world where there's unseen influences in a positive way pushing us forward. If you need evidence of this, look how many people under the age of 20 now follow astrology on various different social media apps. But astrology has never been so popular, ever. When it surged like this before, people like me have been slaughtered, burnt at the stake, expelled. You know, astrologers have had a pretty grim death over the last couple of millennia. But now I'm training more and more astrologers. I'm getting people out there who are actually practicing astrology and charging money for it. There's more and more astrologers out there on the street and more people getting interested in it and more people learning it for themselves. And this is part of the first wave. The more people are studying things like astrology, personal growth and self-development through whatever method possible, the more they are becoming self-empowered. and not buying into the narrative of 2.2 kids, mortgage, car, job. Which but just that in itself is threatening to the stability of the status quo as dictated by what I see as the dominator culture. The churches, the banks, the politicians, the old men, speaking as an old man. But you can't stop it. There is no force on earth now that could ban astrology. It's out there.
Too much
and it's
information.
in the forefront of the consciousness revolution.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a privilege to be an astrologer at this time, I tell you.
It is.
Mind you, for the first 35 years of my astrological life, first 40 years, I was so much in debt. It's only in the last 7 or 8 years that I've made any money. I wouldn't recommend people to do it the way I did it, but you've got to learn somehow.
Yeah. You opened the door for so many of us.
I'm one of the people who opened the door, yeah. But having said that, I have my own dinosaur ways. You know, most people these days, they'll, oh yeah, I want to do your chart. Right, when's your date, time, place of birth? Click, 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 click. Okay, there's your horoscope. See you like this. And I'm like, from my perspective, you're not an astrologer if you can't do a horoscope by hand without an app or software. You need to calculate it with tables and draw it up yourself, because it's the very act of drawing a horoscope, putting the planets places in, drawing the aspect lines in, that creates it to come alive and gives it depth and meaning. If it's just presented to you on a screen, you're only seeing one level of the onion, one layer of the onion. But if you're drawing it yourself, you get it all. Mm-hmm. So I do think that everyone, if you're going to be an astrologer, you must learn to do it by hand. It's much easier than most people say it is.
Good advice there. You've also spoken very powerfully about the end of guilt and shame as evolutionary tools. And yes. I'm wondering there, what do you feel actually replaces those? Because those have been so rampant in our society. We want to feel guilt. We're addicted to our shame. Where is the other side of the coin for those evolutionary tools that are going to get us to the next stage of evolution?
The priests would say if there were no guilt and no shame, then we would just become rampant. And I would say, yeah, that might have been the case 50 to 100 years ago, but not now. There is an intelligence out there that recognizes that guilt, shame, fear are the tools of repression. How's it go? You've sinned. You're a bad person. You're going to go to hell and burn in damnation for the rest of eternity. You've created, you're a really nasty person because you did this and you should feel guilty and shameful. Oh, but by the way, God loves you. You know, no paradox there. Without guilt, fear and shame, some people would. Some people who are, I'm sorry to use this word, I don't know a better word, unstable, would feel liberated and then probably do bad things, some, initially. But after a very brief period of adjustment, they would be seen, weeded out, and 99% of people would be able to relate to each other in a much more integrated, complete, holistic way than has ever been the case in our history. We'd no longer look at each other in a way that's based on possession or desire. We'd see each other in our glory as equal individuals, regardless of colour, age, shape, gender. Can't wait for that one. There are ways in which this process could be radically accelerated. But those ways would be unacceptable to most people because it's too much in a short space of time. But I am an advocate of this. For example, at a global level, I'd just say, right, single currency across the planet. That's the first thing. One currency. That would get rid of the stock markets and exchange rates overnight. It would disempower a lot of the money lenders and the money brokers. Then I think national borders need to go because we are one species. And if you really want a bit of controversy, I'd say, well, I know a lot of people are going to go, he's Satan. I'd legalise all drugs, knowing that by doing so, that 5% of the population would die within 3 or 4 months from overdoses. But also that within a year, everyone with an addictive mentality would be dead, and 50% of the criminals in the world would be out of business. And just to add a little bit of more fuel to the fire, I'd also close all the churches and the synagogues and the mosques and turn them into community centres. And at the same time say, look, if you want to worship God, Allah, Buddha, fine. Do it in your own home. There's no need for any priests anymore telling us what to believe. When we were out there tilling the fields, 5 generations ago, we needed someone to minister to our spiritual salvation. Yes, that's what going to church was for on a Sunday. This is 120 years ago. Not anymore. We don't need this anymore. We all have our own relationship with spirit and with the divine, however we choose to see it as being. So we don't need anyone to tell us what to believe or how to believe, or that we've been good or we've been bad. We're growing up as a species. And that's scary to some people because it means we have to take responsibility for our actions and our thoughts. We have to live by our own conscience because no one's going to stand over us and say you should or you should not. But you know, once we've gone through a short period of adjustment, I believe this will balance out. And this is radical. I know this is not going to happen in my lifetime. But it's in the same breath that I also say that if astrology were taught in schools, within 1 or 2 generations, we'd see an end to warfare and racism and misogyny and cultural divide. Because everyone would know each other's charts. Everyone would naturally gravitate to the similar type of people who they naturally get on with. There'd be no more war or racial divide. But then, show me a government that's brave enough to say, okay, let astrology be taught in schools. It has to be all at once.
In all of this, if we just remove guilt, shame, and fear.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. These are the monkeys on our backs. This is what's been suppressing us, repressing us for thousands of years. Basically, other people telling us what to do and how to believe, what to believe. Do you know where the origin of religion come from? I worked it out a couple of months ago. For my documentary on the history of Western astrology, I was exploring how the ancients, and I don't mean the ancients of 5,000 years ago, I mean the ancients of 50,000 years ago, how they measured the movement of the planets and the stars. And there was a time where ancient villages, communities would work out by using poles with shadows when the solstice was and when the equinoxes were. So they build monuments. They build signposts in the ground So the shadows would say, this is solstice, this is equinox. At that point, humanity split into two. There were those who just used these timings for calendrical purposes. Okay, it's solstice, time to start thinking about the harvest, or it's equinox, time to start sowing or reaping. But then there's those who sought meaning from this, not just calendrical, but they sought meaning. And they appointed themselves priests to say, okay, so this is solstice and it's aligning with that star. That means this, therefore, this is true. And they used that as a power tool over their neighbours because they knew things that their neighbours didn't. This was the start of priesthood, which in turn became religion. This is why I was talking just this morning with my colleague Sue Brain, who I do regular videos with. We both agreed that the original god and the original goddess was the sun and the moon. They've been there forever. We're the only planet that can see its own moon. Every planet apart from Mercury and Venus has moons, but no other planet can see their moon except Earth, because it's either too small or too far away. We can. And there's pretty lot of evidence that Neanderthal man was lunar orientated. They lived at night and slept in the day. They worshipped the moon more than the sun. And this still goes on. This is why I go out at solstice. This is why people go to Stonehenge and the stone circles and the celebratory points on the landscape that are set out, as you were telling me earlier in Peru, why everything is set out to the movement of the planets and the stars in the heavens. This goes back tens of thousands of years. And yet we deny it in our culture as mere superstition. What's wrong with us?
We're remembering.
We're remembering. The memories are coming back. Our ancestors are talking to us. Exactly. This is the wake-up call. This is it. Great time to be alive, Emilio.
Great time, brother. We end every show with a segment called The Final Trio. Before we get into that, two things. Is there anything else that you would like to mention about what you're seeing into for 2026? And also, where would you send people to connect with you and your work, and to get all of these updates that you're giving out in such a really precise time that we're living in?
Well, with my work, I'm just doing as much as I can to get astrology out there into the world, both in terms of technologically through various platforms, but I'm also doing more and more conferences, lectures, workshops, and that's where websites and Instagram and YouTube come in really handy. The first question is, where would I send people?
That was the second one. I think you answered it, unless you want to mention anything else. But also, if you had any last thoughts on this next year, 2026.
It's a nexus point. It's analogous to the birth canal or the thin end of a pencil sharpener. Once we get through that, and that point will be no later than mid-July, late July. Once we're through that, we either expand rapidly and suddenly go whoosh into glory, or we contract and start shriveling. And that's why I think that 26 is the year we've been waiting for, not all our lives, but for millennia. That our ancestors have sat around their campfires dreaming of this time. And we have an obligation, not just to us, but to our ancestors as well, This is when the purpose of evolution, the purpose of human existence, if you like, becomes more apparent. I know it's easy to say, and it's just philosophical gobbledygook in many people's eyes. But these are the people who are just obsessed with money and power and greed. That's a very narrow-minded viewpoint. They're just going to end up the richest corpse in the graveyard, you know. Those who dare to look for meaning, who dare to look beyond the parameters of what passes for normal, will realise that this is the year that changes everything, not just collectively, but individually as well. We can't go back. I want people by the end of this year to be celebrating their lives and enjoying themselves, as opposed to living under constant fear of being ridiculed, shamed, or bombed, or persecuted for their religious beliefs. Religion. Religare comes from a Latin, to bind, to tie down. Same root as the word ligament, to link muscle to bone, to hold things in place. It's a binding tool. Not a fan. Not a fan.
Oh my goodness. As I told you, we end every show with a segment called the Final Trio, just personalized questions that we ask at the end of every show.
This is what last
you
time
remember it. You remember
it. Really just like, what? Ooh, we're gonna have to think about that. Come on then. What you got?
We got some more of those.
Okay, let's go then. I'll do my best.
All right. First one I have for you is, what truth did life teach you that astrology alone never could?
That I have a choice. The choice to be happy or to be sad. One planet, 8 billion different worlds. We can choose how we see the world as being. And I choose to go out there and smile at people. And many of them look at me and go, what are you smiling at? And others smile back. And then it's infectious. It spreads. So yeah, I choose to be positive. I choose to smile. I choose to dance. Does that answer that?
Yeah, and that's the choice that we're faced with every single day of our lives. So powerful. Second question I have is, imagine that future humans that are looking back at this exact window of time with absolute clarity. If they could say one thing to us right now, standing at this threshold, what do you think they would ask us not to forget?
Well, on the one hand, they'd be looking back at us going, you've been crazy. Now you're waking up. But an exact answer to your question, what would they tell us not to forget? That is simple. It is the wisdom of the body. Trust your body. Your body has instinct as well as intuition. And gut instinct never lies. Trust yourself.
I needed to hear that personally. Thank you. This last question I have for you is, what do you feel that evolution is actually testing humanity for at this time?
Movement forward. Evolution is being a test upon us to see if we're ready to aspire to the next level. What is the next level? The universe is lonely. I'm not suggesting we're all going to become angels or we're all going to become gods. I am suggesting that we have a far greater capacity than we've ever imagined, both cellularly, logically, emotionally, spiritually. and that we're going to become far more than we could have been. And as a result, we're going to emerge into a collective consciousness, a galactic consciousness, if you like, that's been out there since the birth of the universe, and probably before. And they're waiting, and they're calling us home. Can't wait. I hope I can get there without physically dying.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Steve Judd, I feel absolutely privileged to have this time with you. The way that you approach not only your mastery in astrology, but the way you view all the other layers of reality of the world and how these dots connect gives us so much clarity. He's given me a lot of hope and clarity personally. And I can't wait to continue doing these as we progress forward, as we move forward as a species, to really check in to see where we're at and how well of these choices we're making. So thank you, brother, for the wisdom that you shared today with us.
It's very easy for me to, you ask just the right questions, and you're a great interviewer because you ask the right questions and you give me the space to be able to philosophize on the spot in ways that I can't do on my own, and I can't do in most other conversations because it's too narrow. So I think I should be thanking you as much as you thank me. But I would remind your listeners, I'm just a 70-year-old bloke living in the south of England who happened to find astrology, or astrology happened to find him. And I'm just like everyone else. There's nothing special about any of us. We're just using our talents. And the only thing that I've developed in my life really is this hope for the future, without ignoring the lessons of the past. And I feel that too many people are focused on the past and the reasons why things have gone wrong, rather than looking forward to the future with hope in their eyes and hope in their hearts. So let's dream it in. What we've got to lose?
Let's dream it in. Let's create it together. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the acknowledgement, and always welcome to have all the spaciousness that you need to philosophize about life, because you never know what comes out in that present moment, in the unknown, without planning, as you said. So thank you, brother, and we'll do this very, very soon. I'm sure of it.
My pleasure. Well, we'll do this again in a year's time, if not before, and we'll see where we are then.
Yeah. Hopefully not a year. That's too long for me. No. Just kidding.
See.
Whenever the right time is. Thank you.
All right, my friend. Bless you. Be well.